Welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. Really sad news for music fans. One Direction member, Liam Payne, died. He fell out or jumped out of an Argentinian hotel window about 3 stories, and sounds like he cracked his head open and died. I also don't think that this was accidental. The singer had been to rehab twice. He talked about his fear that he would never hit rock bottom and was terrified what rock bottom looked like for him. And sadly, yesterday, he found it. And it was the concrete in the courtyard of a hotel where he had been watching his old bandmate, Niall, just, a couple weeks ago. So he had been in the country for 2 weeks, and he'd had a very public series of breakups from women. He had a child with one of them and talked about the difficulty in learning how to become a father and how he used cooking as an outlet, a coping outlet to try and create some normalcy. But the thing is, when you become really famous, really young, it absolutely scrambles your eggs. And I have seen it so many times throughout my career, especially when I worked in music, people who would become famous overnight, and you could see the change. And for some people, it's absolutely tragic because all of a sudden everyone knows who you are. And I was kind of making fun of Chapel Rowan a few weeks ago because I wasn't making fun of her because her mental health struggles, because I believe that is completely real because of what fame can do to a person. What I was saying is she should have, just sort of trudged her way through a couple of shows, not canceled them, because people who work really hard, who may also have their own set of mental health issues, paid a lot of money that they maybe didn't have to go see her, and then they were SOL. But it just goes to show you why you have to take things like this seriously, because there is, as Chapel Roan has said, that quest for fame, that need to be famous is so great. And you really feel like you will do anything to accomplish that. And, necessity is the mother of invention. So when you want to be famous, when you want something so badly, for some people, it lights a creative spark. And for others, they have a momentary spark and then they lose it, and they're never really able to get back to where they were when they landed on the launching pad that sent them into the stratosphere. And that's one of the things that haunts people. It is losing the muse or the fear of having that creative vein just close on you and not being able to tap into it and produce art that is meaningful to other people. Because, that is the aspect of fame, is when you share something and a lot of people enjoy it and they want more of it and you can't give it to them, it creates a pressure, because fame for a lot of people becomes its own identity. And in some ways, it's really great. And that's why not a lot of people have a ton of sympathy for famous people who complain about things, because they think, well, how bad can it be? It's like everyone knows you, everyone loves you. That's all anyone thinks they want, is notoriety and affection. But people, along with that, are also constantly judging you and, what you're wearing and who you're with and your artistic output. Like it's never good enough. You're always measured against yourself, but then you're measured against every other famous person. And, you just look at people in your generation who lost their lives. For children of the 60s, it was Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. For Gen Xers like me, the first person that comes to mind is Kurt Cobain. And it's funny because the difference between someone like Kurt Cobain and Liam Payne is Kurt Cobain, like, yes, they wanted people, Nirvana wanted people to love their music. They wanted to make their fans happy. They wanted to create something. They loved being together, and they wanted to share that with people. And, they didn't just see success. They saw a massive paradigm shift in all of musical culture. And that is one of the moments where you can go back to and go, yes, this is where everything changed. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of a background you come from. I don't know that anything prepares you from that under the best circumstances. You know, Kurt Cobain was such an incredible artist because he was a tortured soul. But, you know, I got to meet him before Nirvana, like totally blew up. And he was a sweet, shy, funny guy. And then afterward, yes, he did change. And there was a darkness that came over him.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
I saw the same thing with Shannon Hoon, who was the singer for Blind Melon. All I can say. And Shannon didn't take his own life the way Kurt Cobain did, but he succumbed to drugs on his tour bus. You know, same with Scott Weiland. And these guys were fun and carefree before they became really, really famous. And I remember, because I was friends with Shannon Hoon, and I remember seeing his personality change. And there's nothing that really prepares you for that because, you know, even if you go to a psychologist, you know, I remember seeing a therapist early on when I was at MTV because I was on the verge of developing panic disorder. And it was early on when I was still, you know, it was just the first couple of years at MTV. And I just wanted someone to talk to because, you know, my friends didn't want to hear how weird the world had gotten with, you know, walking down the street and having people know your name and going to the gynecologist's office and having some guy in the waiting room going, "Hey, MTV girl, MTV girl." And I just remember being so mortified by that. But I had a psychologist ask me for 8x10s for some of her relatives. And I was like, isn't that some sort of a violation? Like, isn't there supposed to be patient-doctor confidentiality? And that was really the end of that therapeutic relationship. But the point being, everyone wants something from you and everyone's judging you. And if you do not have the mental wherewithal to deal with that, something no one teaches you and very few people around you, you know, it's like, by and large, the people on your team just want you to keep making money because they want to be employed. And, you know, they want the hits and the cards and letters to keep on coming. So they're supporting themselves. So someone like Liam Payne, who had, you know, this phenomenal success with One Direction, he did not have the same success that Harry Styles and Zayn and some of the other guys in the band had, even though he had put out some albums, and that's what haunts you because it is like a drug. And for someone who is dealing with addiction, you always want to get back to the place that was just the main line for dopamine. You want to get back there. You want to be under the lights. You want the adulation. You want the feeling of performing and the inability to hear yourself sing because people are screaming your words back at you. Very few people on earth know what that feels like, but imagine having that and then not having it, and then having a series of bad relationships and, you know, a child that you're worried you're failing. So they find in his hotel room drug paraphernalia and foil and a burnt pop can because he was obviously cooking either cocaine or heroin. And he had a psychotic break, and it sounds like he jumped out the window. And it's just not worth it. All of that fame, it's just not worth it. And it's really, really hard to get off the carousel. Just ask Margot Kidder. You can't because she's dead. But she was another one who experienced tremendous mental illness and, you know, which was mostly untreated. And she basically lived like a homeless person. You know, it's like another kind of direct comparison is athletes who have a great deal of success for a while, say in the NFL, and then you hear a story almost every week about some former NFL player who is arrested for domestic violence or drugs. Because it's even harder for athletes to get back to that place because when your body breaks down, there is no more gravy train. At least artists can go through evolutions, and I'm sure Liam Payne was capable of so much more. And if he did end his own life, it's a good time to reflect on the pain that causes other people. And if you are a One Direction fan, you are absolutely feeling it. And if you have had thoughts of suicide, you have to externalize it. You have to talk to people. And, there are ways to get treatment. Don't go on social media and broadcast it. That will not make you feel better. The quick hits of dopamine and 1,000 likes aren't going to make you feel better. It's not going to take those feelings away. But there are ways of coping and dealing with this, even if that beloved fame has eluded you. One of the best things that happened to me after I left MTV, which is where I had my entire identity, was moving to Seattle and living a civilian life and getting back. And, it took a year and a half to get back to something that felt like normalcy, that felt like the kind of life that I had as a kid. And not a lot of people have that. And, I went and found another therapist. And one of the big things we worked on was letting go of the need for fame. And once I overcame that, anything that happened to me after that was kind of gravy, not really necessary. Like, I know that I can create a good life for myself outside of any sort of a spotlight. A lot of people who've been just burned by limelight, they don't know that. They don't know that there is a world on the other side that they can engage in. And I wish Liam Payne had found that. I wish he were a footnote and not a headline, and that he had found something with deeper meaning and deeper happiness with his son and with his family. But there's something about his life where you can internalize those lessons into your life. And again, to dovetail off of Tuesday's podcast, really do a thorough examination and just know that beware your dreams, for they may come true. And if they do, and if they burn you, then it's up to you to come up with a new set of dreams. It is entirely possible. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.